Running into the set. Welcome to OnSet. Nobody will notice that run in at the beginning. Welcome to the last stream of the year. Well, my last stream anyways. Thanks everyone who's been watching this whole time. I'm Daniel Norton. I'm here with Cadence. We're going to create some beauty images. This is always fun for the end of the year. I read a couple of the comments talking about beauty dishes. We will use a beauty dish to start off with because, you know, it's in the name. But I'm going to actually show you my favorite tool for shooting beauty, and we're going to create some different shots. And we're going to talk a little bit about the process of creating a beauty style image, whether it be an actual beauty image like for an advertisement campaign or for a model's portfolio, or possibly just a beauty style image for somebody you're photographing. Maybe they are an executive or just a person that just wants a great, beautiful picture of themselves. So we're going to, Cadence is all those things. So we'll get some good shots and we'll go from there. So we are going to use Flash today. I will try to go through and tell you everything I'm using as I go. I am on my own and I didn't set up my computers in the right spots today, so I'll be running around a little bit like crazy. So hopefully I'll run back and check the chat every few minutes. We're going to use Flash. I will try to say what I'm using as I go. If I don't say what something is and you're curious, just ask me and I will let you know. So first of all, I'm going to work today with the Nikon Z6ii, which is pretty much my standard camera. I have the 24 to 120 on here. Typically for a beauty type shot, you're going to want to use a slightly longer lens. The longer lens is going to allow you to stand back further. Standing back further is going to increase what they call compression. Somebody's about to write in the chat that it's not really compression, but you know, which it actually will make the nose seem a little bit less long. It'll make the face a little more squared up and a little bit more jaw to it. So it creates that kind of beauty style look. Less natural, in my opinion, and not my favorite. Oh, by the way, let me know how the audio sounds. I probably should have done that before I did all that. Not my favorite for general portraits, but for beauty, it really looks great. So let me just check the chat and make sure it sounds good. Okay, sounds good, sounds good. Okay, happy holidays, California. Aha, it's early there. What's the magic of Chimera? Yes, of course. So somebody asked, I don't know if they're asking me where I get my hair done or you get your hair done. Don't you cut your own hair, don't you?
I do my own hair.
Cadence cuts her own hair. I have a great little salon up near where I live in upstate New York. It's not really upstate, but upstate New York. And I used to get my hair cut in the city, and well worth it. It was like $100, but near me, it's 15 bucks. And honestly, I'm not the person that needs a $100 haircut. So I get it up there, they do a great job, and I give them a nice big tip because it's so much cheaper, but they do an awesome job. Okay. I'm gonna have you sit actually for this, if you don't mind. I'm mostly gonna have her sit because we are going to be moving a lot of lights around her, so I figure, you know, I can get things where, because there's gonna be a lot of moving around. This is not a huge studio. It's a decent size, but it's not gigantic. So I know one of the biggest problems that people often talk about is small spaces. So we're gonna work in a relatively small space. This is probably all the ways to the wall is maybe 15 feet. What we wanna do when we're doing beauty photography is we wanna think about control. And one of the main issues that we'll have, especially in a white space here, is light bouncing around everywhere. So we're gonna have a few tools that we're gonna use to help us control that. Number one is V-flats. And I'm actually gonna start with the back first. We're gonna go for like a white or maybe a light gray background. We'll kind of play around with that a little bit. And the way we're gonna get our background nice and even is we're gonna use V-flats. I'll show you how I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna switch to the other camera. Okay, so we're in the overhead camera. Hopefully I won't forget to turn it back. These are V-flats here. They're from V-flat World. You can also make V-flats yourself. They're basically just cardboard. In this case, they can fold small, which makes them very convenient. They fold down to, I guess that's 3 foot by 3 foot, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Kind of standard V-flats, you can see me in this camera, that we used to make were 8 feet tall. These are only 6. So for standing shots, sometimes they're a little short for V-flat World, but they're great. The portability makes them really great. So worth picking up, I think. You can get them at Adorama and many other places. Now, what we want to do here is we want to create a situation where you can do them one of two different ways, right? You can see they're white on the inside. We're going to bounce our light here. We can either just turn them like this, which is what we're going to do. I didn't do that on that one, which effectively is going to give us a bouncing area so we can bounce light on the background, and also a flag, right? It's going to cut the light from coming forward. The other way to do it is if you had enough space, you can actually bring them up forward more where the black actually goes next to her and creates more of a negative fill, but we don't want that for this, so we're gonna come back. If you are using like colored gels and stuff, this is another great technique for that, because what it does do is it helps the color that you're using with the gels to stay on the background and not come forward and hit your model. So V-flats are really useful for background setups. I may have to move you over a little bit too, because I think I didn't put you right in the center. Yep, I didn't put the chair in the center. And these C-stands are somehow over to the side further than they usually are. So let me rearrange a little bit here. Excuse me while I rearrange my studio. Okay, that'll be fine. Oh. Well, as I said, these fold down so you can see them coming apart here. All right, that should be fine. I just want to make sure I have enough space. I'm just going to look through the camera and make sure that when we punch in, I'm going to put this right at 120. We get it nice and tight. You can shoot these horizontally or vertically. I find horizontal is nice when I'm doing live streams. So we're going to do that. I'm going to bring it back to about 85 millimeter, and I'm going to frame it up, and then I'm going to get in where I want to be close-wise. This gives me a little bit of room to play. If I want to get a little bit more or less, I can zoom my lens. Because remember, as I said, the compression is based on your distance. So we want to get the shot to look the way we want it to look. Zooming in and out is just going to change our composition. So that's what we want. This is pretty good right here. Okay. And I don't see the V-flats in the shot, so that means I'm in a good position. So that's the beginning of that. Let me grab the, we're still good, right? Perfect. You know, we hardly ever use the overhead camera, but I always forget I have it. Okay, so we're going good. I'm just gonna take these, and what I'm gonna do, I'll move this so you guys can see. I'll do this. So what we're gonna do is, slide this out. I'm effectively gonna take my light, and I'm gonna shoot it into the V-flat so that it bounces back and covers the wall. So I'm gonna, these have a pretty wide spread on them, so I'm gonna have to put them in pretty tight. Sometimes people think because the front of them is flat that it's more of a focused light, but it's really not. The Profoto lights, which by the way, I said I was gonna say everything and I didn't. These are Profoto B10Xs. I'm using the B10Xs because they are 500 watt seconds, so they're my most powerful lights. And you wanna put, I know people are probably thinking, why are you putting your most powerful light in the background? Well, because the background's gonna have to get blown out white. I'm not gonna need as much light on her because the light's gonna be real close to her. The key light, that is. Okay, we're gonna try to make sure as little or none of that light is coming forward. I use the modeling light to do that. The stands are still slightly in my way, but we'll make it work. Okay. Good. So I'm basically just gonna take two lights that are the same. They're both on the same zone. So basically you've got channels, and I'm sure zone is not the correct word for Profoto, but zones. What this means is that they're both going to fire. Everything's on the same channel, meaning that they're all on 3, so they'll fire, all the lights will fire together. But these are, group is what they call it. They're in the C group. So C group means that, you know what I'm going to turn off the overhead lights so you guys can see what this is doing. The C groups means that these two lights are going to fire the same. So we can see that she's kind of silhouetted. We want to, I'll show you, I'm going to turn the light a little bit, and you can see how it starts to hit her. You should be able to see that, I think. We want to basically turn it until as little light as possible is touching her. And I'm going to turn, I'm going to probably use TTL, but I'm just going to put these to start with. I'm going to put them at, let's say, 4. So they range in power from 1 to 10. So somebody that's good at math can tell me how many watt seconds that is. But that's not me. All right, so 4 just seems like a good space. It gives me room to move both ways. All right, so when I turn these off, we're gonna be in the dark for a second. It's very spooky. It's very spooky in here, but we're gonna turn the lights on now. All right, so our background lights are set. Let me switch back to the other camera. Nope, that's not the right one. This is it. Cool, cool, cool. All right. Background lights are set and good to go. Now we're gonna just basically set them up and shoot them. I just wanna show you what it looks like. Effectively, she's gonna more or less be a silhouette. Now, as I said, we're in a white studio, which means that she won't be a complete silhouette. Some light is gonna come forward, but hopefully it won't be too much. I'm gonna leave the system in manual. And before we do anything, as we all know, those who have been here before know what's about to happen. We wanna set our camera so that none of the light in the space affects our shot. Because we're gonna leave these lights on so we can see what we're doing. What we're gonna do is we're gonna set our camera at the fastest shutter speed in its normal sync range, which is 200. I'm gonna set it at 100 ISO, which is the lowest ISO within its normal range. And then I'm gonna set the aperture until I get a black frame. Being that it's mirrorless, I can just look through and see the frames black, but we'll also do a test shot. I'm at 6.3, which should work for me. This doesn't need to be in focus, and it probably won't be. I'm gonna come over here. Okay. In theory, you can see my screen and me now, hopefully. Oop. And we can see the frame here is black. We can go over here to our slider. Then again, I'm in Capture 1. We always use Capture 1 for this. And we're gonna slide the exposure slider over. And we wanna make sure we're at least a couple stops underexposed. So we start seeing her around almost 3.5 stops. So we're very underexposed. Because what we're doing is we're setting a baseline here, right? This is effectively, you could almost think of it as our shadow. If we start pulling the image forward in post, if we go beyond 3 stops in our shadows, we're gonna start seeing this ugly interior light, which we do not want. So that gives us plenty of room to move. Okay, everything's set right. You can see the black frame. I've got sound still. People are coming in from Maryland. Boy, we're getting all kinds of Norway. Here in the US, we're getting all kinds of crazy weather coming this weekend. So not so much here, knock on wood. Seems like we're gonna be pretty good. All right, so again, I just have these set at 4, I think I said. This is a baseline, and we'll just take a shot. This is just gonna be our background. Okay, so we can see here we have a kind of a light gray, and if we wanna get it to a bright white or something, we can get there. You can see that, right? Because I have this set correctly? Yes, I do, all right. We can adjust it until we get a bright white. So there's a couple of ways we can do that. I can jump into Capture 1, and once again, bring my exposure up until the background becomes white. Boy, it looks like it's like at least 4 stops to get us a white background. So we're just gonna go over to our C group. We're gonna bring it up 5 stops. And this is why I use these in the background because they're more powerful, and we're probably going to use them almost at max power. You lose it, well, shoot, there we go. And we can see that that actually, I think it might even be out of focus a little bit because I wasn't really, oh no, it's focused. By getting the background that white, you see how much light's actually coming forward. This is kind of, I'm cheating a little bit in this studio because I know that's going to happen, which is great because that's going to end up being kind of a fill light for me. Now, if you didn't want that, what you'd have to do, and there's a video on the channel if you roll back to it, somebody in the chat who probably remembers it, where I did a shoot with Joe McNally, and we photographed a woman, and basically what we ended up having to do was hang black paper and just really cover the background with it. So it can be done. I'm not doing that today because actually I'm going to use this to my advantage. What I am going to do though is I'm just going to cut this down a little bit more. I mean, there's a few things we can do. We're not lighting much of the background, so I could bring, and I will do this, I'm going to bring everything back a bit. So closer to the background. By moving it closer to the background, I'll need to use less light in order to get it as bright as I want it to be, and also it will, less light will come forward for exactly the same reason. So that should be good. Let's go like that. We may have an issue again, the further back this gets, the more likely it's going to be in the shot. I know I'm really small right now, but let's just do a shot and I'll show you what it looks like if it's, oh yeah, I can see the V flat in the shot now. So here I'm gonna have to zoom in a little bit. Gonna have to do a little bit of an adjustment, but if this works well light-wise, I'm bringing the exposure down 2 stops. If this works well light-wise, then we'll, okay, yeah, it's a little bit better. Okay, so switch this thing so you guys can see what I'm doing. I feel like every time I do a beauty setup, I use a lot of E-flats. It seems like the thing to do when you're doing beauty for some reason. Okay, so we're gonna go like this. Trying to get this out of the shot as best as possible. These are currently at 8. I think just because, oh, there we go. I can go like this, and let's see where we're at. Okay. We're going to change our composition a little bit, but now we got a little bit. The background is not quite white. Probably going to have to go to 9. But before we do that, let's now bring in our main light. So I'm going to turn the background lights off because I don't want them adjusting as I go. Go along, guys. I didn't give you the overhead shot. I'm going to show you the shot right now. Boop. 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 You have to make that sound when you switch. Tell me we didn't switch. There we go. Oh, I have to hit save. Save. Okay, having a little bit of a... All right, I'm just going to do this so you guys can see it. There we go. There it is. And then I can go like this. Okay, haha, got that working. This is not exactly the shot I wanted, but it's fine, it'll work. Let's go like that. So we have these two things to go with. And that sets us up for this. You can see the shot. Let me get it set up and I'll switch that around so you guys aren't spinning. All right, so the first thing I want to do, you saw that shot. All right, next thing I want to do is use the beauty dish. Let's just get that out of the way. So the beauty dish is the Profoto beauty dish, 22 inches. It's got a grid on it, which is what we're going to use. And what this is silver inside. It's not huge, but also not tiny. So it's going to create a light that's punchy, but not super harsh. If I had a little tiny reflector or the head by itself, it would be very, very hard. This is going to be soft-ish because I'm going to put it real close. So I'm going to get it more or less where I want it. And this I'm going to boom out, and when you're booming out a light, you definitely want to use a sandbag. So I'm going to throw a sandbag on it. When we're using a C-stand, we put the sandbag on the long leg. A lot of times when people do sandbags, they think you put it on the back, but you put it on the long leg of a C-stand, and also you boom the light out the same direction. So we're going to do that. Now I'm using what's called a Matthews Magic Finger, which allows me to just kind of go like this, which is very convenient. I'm going to adjust as much as I can while it's still down low, because the higher up it gets, the more risky it is. And also you gotta, you know. And what we want to do is get a little bit of an angle on it. We don't want it to be too steep. The steeper the angle that you have, the more contrast you'll have in the image. So we want it to be contrasty, but not too contrasty. We also want the beauty dish to kind of aim, so the center of the dish is hitting roughly at our eyeballs. But we don't want it to be in the shot, so that means I'm gonna have to move it back a tiny bit, I think, in order to get where I want to be. That seems about right. Let me look through the camera. Yep. All right, so this is in my A group. I'm going to set my camera on TTL. Let's go to our other thing so you guys can see it. Okay, we're on TTL. The background light is now turned off. Okay. Okay, now we've got a nice crisp light that is shaping the face, right? And it's very moody and very dark. Now remember though, we're gonna get light from our background when it comes on. So that looks pretty good. I'm gonna switch to manual again. I'm gonna turn my C lights back on. I heard it go beep, and then we're just gonna take a shot and we'll adjust from there. Okay, so now what we've got is sharp and crispy, right? We can see detail, right? The small light is where you get the contrast. Let me switch this over because you'll get the back of my head right now. All right, let's just do this. What's that one? Yep, that should be right. Okay. Had it on the wrong camera. That way when I'm talking to this camera, you're not seeing the, okay. Anyways, not that they're looking at me now anyways, right? So what we get here is a clean light. It's not like super stark white in the background, but it's, yeah, no, actually we're 255, so we're there, right? Our background's white. She is cut out, but not completely flat. Because if you remember before, where we just let the background do it, you see how flat she looked? Versus when we have detail, right? Detail that shapes the face. We want to shape the face. That's the whole thing about beauty, is getting the light to be kind of the crispy light, right? Let's go back to where we were. There it is. All right, this all looks good. We're getting a little bit of separation because the light's coming from the background. Here, I don't want any of that background light to hit her face, so I think that's pretty good. But what I can do now is a couple of things. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna experiment a little bit with the V-flats. Now, I don't need any kind of fill light here because the room is filling the space. If you were in a dark room, you might want to add some kind of fill light, but we don't need to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these V-flats and I'm just going to open them up a little bit. And by doing that, I'm just going to let some of the light from the background creep forward. We don't want to go too crazy here. We just want to give enough to give us kind of a little bit of a glow on the back. I'm not changing any exposures or anything. There we go. We can see, again, the subtlety. Here in the first one, you see it a little bit. Here we're getting much more of that kind of subtle hair light. So it's picking up nice color in her hair. We're getting a little bit over here. We could open that one up a tiny bit more if we want. You know, depending on if you want it to be even or if you like it with a little bit more contrast on one side or the other. Now, I think I'm pretty good, but I do think this key light could be a tiny bit hotter. Like, it's fine. The exposure is neutral and pretty good. I like my beauty to be a little bit more snappy. So I'm just gonna take this front light and I'm gonna just turn it up. I'm in manual, remember, so I'm gonna go to my A light. I'm just gonna turn it up. We'll say 3/10 of a stop and we'll take a look and see what that looks like. Now this light's not really hitting the background, so it shouldn't affect, yeah, perfect. It shouldn't affect that. So we're not gonna get any extra like blowout or whatever. But we can see now, the hotter that light is in the front, the more shape we get to her face, and we're still not having any kind of an issue with like overexposure. We still have a decent exposure. We'd probably go even a little bit more. And this is where, like, whether you're using a light meter or you're using TTL, you know, which is basically a light meter, you want to get your basic exposure and then you want to look at it and see what works for you to get the exposure that you like. All right, we'll leave that there for a second and let's take a look. Hopefully people were looking at pictures. Yep, they were, okay. I had that set right, good. Let's see. I stopped doing beauty portraits because of the amount of work in post I put on myself. Well, I think if you are careful with your lighting, you shouldn't need to do that much work in post. The trick is to have enough contrast to the light to give the shape, but enough fill to basically kill any imperfections in the face. Okay. You don't have the photo. Okay, that must be old because there's a photo up there now. Sandbags, yep. Okay. Yeah, there's some kind of thing going around with this cough. It's killing me. Do you typically shoot TPL? Okay, yes. I'm going to talk about TTL in a meter because this is actually a pretty common thing. So let's have a quick conversation about that. Let's see. Let me just do this for a second. Nope. This. Okay, good. I didn't lose it. I seem to lose stuff when I... Okay, so the question is, do I use TTL for this or do I use a meter, which is always a funny thing because TTL, you are using a meter. But do I use a handheld meter? I get that. I find that TTL is a great way to get started. Whether you're using TTL or you're using a separate meter, Once you get your base exposure based on what the system recommends, right, the meter or TTL, you're going to need to make tweaks yourself. You're going to have to go into it and make some adjustments to suit your eye. The meter is only going to give you what it thinks right, whether it be a handheld meter or TTL, no matter what. Also, that reminds me, because I almost forgot, as I have it staring me in the face. Let's do one of these. We've used this, I think we used this last week when we were doing the DIY stuff. This helps you get better white balance, basically. It's a neutral gray. So we'll hold that in front of our face, and we'll just make a shot of it, and then we can use that to set our white balance. I'll show you in a second on Capture One. You can also use it to get your exposure, but now the thing is with this, of course, we are, we are, of course, using good strobes and stuff. So the white balance should be pretty clean, but everything you put in front of your light, everything you do is going to affect the white balance. So when I click this, we can actually see it did change a little bit. This is a more neutral white balance. Once you have your lights in place, you want to do this. Now, if you do that and then you make a major change to your lights, oops. Oh, I don't know I did that. If you do that and then you make a major change to your lights, obviously you have to do it again because the color is going to shift. Let's see. There's much difference between solid metal beauty dish and the portable version. 100% there is a huge difference. Whether or not one is better or worse is kind of up to you. Gavin's playing games on Twitch. I do not know if he is. I'm clearly doing this and not watching Twitch. Yeah, manual for consistency. Right. How about putting the black V-flats beside the model? I already talked about that. We're not going to do that. It's mostly me because I want to make it like Vogue covers, even if it's just, oh, you're talking about the beauty. You know, I think you might want to go look at magazine covers again when people say that. Magazine covers aren't usually that super retouched unless they're like of celebrities that are, you know, that have certain standards they want to put on the front. You would be surprised how little retouching is done if you like things. Now, that's not to say it doesn't need to be done, you know, but it doesn't need to be done. I just said that, right? You can get a pretty clean shot without retouching. All right, let's switch back to this. And let's just shoot it. Now I got the proper color, so let's get a couple of frames. And we'll mess around a little bit with the V-flats as requested. And the camera is in manual. The lights are now in manual. So everything should be consistent frame after frame after frame, and we can bang out our shots as we go. Nice and easy, just like that. So what would happen if we move the black next to the model? Well, the reason why I didn't do that is because, switch this again, is because I wanted to do that separation light coming from the back, right? If I put the black side next to the model, we're not gonna get that, right? What we're gonna get is light going the other way. But we can bring them up. First of all, if we brought them, there's two things you could do here. One is to bring the V-flats up like I showed you, like this, and like that, which will in fact give a little bit of this kind of cutback or negative fill. But the other thing you could do is you could also leave them the way they were and then just bring black cards on the side, right? You could do it either way, but we'll just do this because specifically somebody asked, even though I said I wasn't gonna do it, but you know, I always do stuff I say I'm not gonna do once we get the shot, just to kind of show you what would happen. This is not the best way to do this. If you really wanna, if you really wanna do something like this, the best way to do it is really to have not V-flats, but U-flats, where you can still shape out the light, because I'm gonna lose so much light now when I do this, but let's give it a shot. I'm gonna turn these up to 10 because we're definitely losing power. All right, so we turn those up. We've got the black now in on the sides. Actually, I guess for consistency, I probably should have left it. The front light hasn't changed. And there you go. Still looks pretty darn good, right? So this is the other way, this is this way. What you lose a little bit of is the light kind of wrapping around if you look at the side of the face. It's not a huge difference, but this also looks good. So let's do it this way as well. The reason why you'd want negative fill on the side of the model is if you had like a really heavy like light coming from the back, oops, that was causing the lights to like blow out. Or let's say she was wearing a white shirt, but being the cadence has dark hair, you know, it's really not any kind of an issue. I was showing that, right? Yeah. So in this particular situation, it doesn't make that much of a difference. Yeah, looks good both ways. Okay, cool. That was with the Beta dish. Now I want to kind of roll back and take a look at a different tool, which I really like for this. Okay. Background needs a gel. A gel for color? Nah. Professional retouch levels. If the model is okay with less retouching, okay, yep. 13 degrees in Twin Falls, Idaho. Ooh. Right. Yeah, smash that like button. All right, cool. So, yeah, there's all different ways to do this, and I think so here's the thing. Let's just talk retouching for a second because people love to talk retouching. Let me spend 5 minutes saying this. You know, the chatter, sorry, I didn't memorize your name as I walked over. It said, well, people hired me for the beauty shots because of all the retouching I've done in previous, well, okay, well then you've got yourself in this situation, right? If you've sold yourself as somebody who does tons of retouching, then you can't really complain about having to do retouching, right? So that's it. So think about that when you're working. I am lazy. I do not want to retouch if I can help it. I enjoy the process of the photo shoot way more than any post-production. So I would rather take the time to get the light super clean so that they don't really need retouching unless there's like some major blemish or something. And that saves me tons of time in post so I can shoot more. That's just how I operate. If you are awesome at retouching, cool. You know, some people are just amazing at it, and props to you. I'm terrible at retouching. I'm not a good retoucher. All right, so let's jump over here and let's mess around. I'm not putting any color gel in the background because I feel like that. First of all, there's two reasons why I'm not going to do it. I think if you're doing a beauty portrait and you want a color background, you really should probably use color paper or a background that is color. The thing about using gels is that you're really amplifying your chance, okay? You're really amplifying your chance of getting that kickback of light. Because remember, all the light's coming forward. Remember that light that was touching her hair that we saw in the separation? If I had a blue gel or a red gel, her hair would be that color. That's why we don't want to do that. If the background itself is a color paper, usually you get less of that. Not none, but less. So if you want color background and you're doing this, then you either need to have even more space so that none of that light touches the model, gel the background, and then use kicker lights or something. So, I mean, it's definitely possible, and people do it, obviously. People do it. I do it. Everybody does. So many things are done. No technique is wrong. It's just different and different ways to approach things. Okay, so again, going to one of my favorite tools that I think is not used that much, or I know is not used that much by stills photographers. So now you're gonna have something you can be like, nobody else in my neighborhood uses this. So you can now market yourself as the person that does that. And it is the lantern. So the lantern is, as you might imagine, a big old ball of light. Now, it's got I have my skirt on there. Yeah, I got a skirt on here. Make sure I'm on the right camera. Yep. There's a skirt on here that allows me to control where some of it falls, but I could leave the whole thing exposed as well. You can also take a paper lantern. We actually, last week at the DIY, I used a little tiny paper lantern, But you could use a large paper lantern that you can get at a party store. Or if you live in New York, you can go down to like 14th Street. No, yeah, 14th Street. And you can pick them up. And basically, these lanterns are great. Just be wary because they are paper. I mean, you can get silk ones as well. They're not made for photo lights, so you got to be a little, even with LEDs and flash and stuff, you got to be a little hesitant that they're not going to light on fire. I actually made a video several years back where I compared a paper one to this one, and as you can probably imagine, this one was better, but the paper one was surprisingly good. So if you want to experiment with this and you don't want to spend $300 or whatever this costs, maybe look at a paper one. I'd go at least 20 inches, which is what I think this one is, if I'm not mistaken. And what we're going to get is a large, soft source that's going to kind of drop the light in front of her, and we can put it real close, and the shape of the light is going to help shape her face. Much like a beauty dish, but a lot more gentle. So going back to that idea of somebody who maybe doesn't have as great a skin, this may be a better option for you. So at this moment, this is in my B group. I'm going to take my A group, A light, which is the beauty dish. I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to take the C lights, which was the background, turn those off. I'm going to switch to the B group on and put it in TTL. So effectively at this moment, I'm metering, right? For all the people that talk about metering, this is my metering phase. I'm going to use TTL and I'm going to make a shot. The camera is going to give me a reading based on what it feels is correct. Okay, so here we go. Okay. I, of course, forgot to switch the thingy. Okay. Cool, cool, cool. All right, so we can see what we've got here. If we compare this, I'm going to go over and compare it. Let me just quickly check the chat while I'm over here. Shoot more fashion portraits, try to avoid the close-ups of beauty shots. Yep. Okay. Yeah, no, right. I don't need a lantern, but after seeing this, exactly. Nobody needs any of this stuff, really. You could probably just have an umbrella and shoot for the rest of your career, but it's so fun to have different toys. So if we look at this, again, this isn't a little underexposed, but if we look at this compared to our initial shot with the beauty dish, we're going to see a few things. Number one, look at the background, right? Background is gray. I'm showing you the right screen, right? Yeah, okay. Background is gray. That's because we have spillage, right? The lights spill into the background. That could be good or bad for you. The shape on her face is similar, but if we look at the line, this shadow is a bit darker, right? And this light is just overall a little bit harder. We can see the more defined contrast here. That has as much to do with the beauty dish as it does with the fact that I have a grid on it. This is actually a little bit punchier, right? And it actually even is narrowing the face a little bit more because it's just, we're seeing the light come in real tight, right? So it's two different things. Let's get a proper exposure on the lantern, but we can see that the lantern immediately is giving us a little bit of a softer vibe. I'm gonna switch to manual again because I have my base reading, right? Just like if I did a reading and the thing said 6.3 and then I dialed it in and it was a little dark, I would just adjust my light. That's exactly what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna come up and I'm gonna give myself half a stop. Cool. All right. Now we're getting closer to a proper exposure. Again, we're still going to bring in background light, so I'm just going to get it as close as I think it should be tiny bit hotter. 0.2. You might be saying, how am I coming up with these numbers? It's kind of a feel, right? I mean, you could just adjust until you get it, which is basically what I'm doing, right? It's kind of a feel based on my own look. The other thing you could do is when I was over here, I'm in capture one, I can just grab the exposure slider and bring it over till it comes to where I think it looks good. It looks good about there, which is like just about a stop. So I just raised it 3/4 of a stop here. So there you go, pretty close. Just took me 2 photos to do it, right? Okay, so here we have a nice kind of a softer shot, but that's still kind of that beauty-ish feel. I feel like, excuse me, I'm just gonna lower this a tiny bit. I'm looking through the back of the camera because you want to make sure you don't get it in the shot. Is it there? Yeah, it's just there, barely there. Okay. It's like one tip, like people used to always ask me like where to put the light. You usually want to put the light as close as you can without it being in the shot. That is kind of the general vibe if you're trying for a soft light. Okay, so we have that there. Let's do this just because we're having fun. Let's go back to this idea of using the black side of the cards. So I'm going to put these black cards real close over here because remember this light's wrapping around a little bit more. So if we might be able to get a little bit of negative fill kind of vibe and tighten up. Again, I'm not turning on the background lights yet. I'm just bringing these in. We're going to see if we can control where this light falls a little better. I'm also noticing it's not quite centered on her. I'm just going to kick it over a little bit. Okay. Let's see what that looks like. A lot of this stuff is very subtle. Oh yeah, definitely. Hey, look at that. Okay. See the difference there? See how the face is like a little tightened up here? Subtle, but it's there. So the black cards are bringing in this little bit of negative fill. Where's a tiny bit hot. Now I'm going to light the background up. Now, again, you could do all kinds of things. You could put a gel on the background. You could put whatever. But in order to kind of stay consistent, I'm going to go white again. So I'm just going to take my light. Instead of bouncing it this time, though, I'm just going to aim it right at the wall. I'm just going to use one light. Actually, I'll use both lights. I'm going to use both lights. And when you have two lights, you probably can't see this, so I will just tell you. I'm effectively crossing the lights. That is, the light on camera right is hitting the wall on camera left, and the light on camera left is hitting the wall on camera right. Now, obviously, we've got bare heads now aiming directly at a white wall. That's going to be way more exposure than it was before. I'm just going to leave the cameras the way they are. You can't see me anyways. I've once again created a thing where you can't see. All right, I'm going to come back in here. I'm in manual. I'm going to turn the B light off. I'm going to turn the C lights back on. Now I'm going to switch them to TTL. Now, it should create kind of a grayish background when I do this. In theory. Yeah, perfect. Because that's what a meter will give you. A meter will give you the exposure for a gray background, even if the background is white. So now, we can switch to manual, turn the B light back on, and I'm going to come to my C light, but I'm going to look at this in Capture One. And I'm going to bring this up until it goes almost white. Not all the way, because we're going to get some light from the lantern too. About 4 stops, same as before. Okay, so I'm going to take the C light, I'm going to bring it up, 2, 3, 4, which now puts it on, I think 5. Okay, good. Now we have clean white background. We got our 255 here. We've got, because we have the negative fill, we have good separation here. It's not blowing forward on us. We have good clean light across the skin. We've got this highlight down her nose, which is natural. We just want to make sure it's not blowing out, which it's not. And yeah, I think we're actually good. I think I'm going to actually bring the lantern away from her about 4 inches. That's all the space I have. Yeah, I'm already, well, actually, I'm only at 85. I'm going to punch this out to 120. I'm going to back up a little bit. So the reason why I'm moving the lantern back is because I want to reduce contrast. The further away the light is, the more it will spread. The fall off is different, so it reduces contrast. I'm reducing the contrast because her nose, like I said, is just a tiny bit hot. So we'll try that. It's also going to change the exposure, and I'll have to change my composition slightly, but let me just look. Okay, that's pretty good. Let me raise this. Good. Let me just make sure they're actually looking at you. They are. Wow, okay, I've been pretty good today. It's actually easier for me to stay on camera when I have to walk way over there. All right, so here we go. Cool. All right, so that's, wow, the lantern is nice. You know what? Forget you're watching this. I don't want to give away my secret. No, I'm just kidding. What's really nice about the lantern, so this is 255, so I'm just looking at the numbers up here. So this is white. You know, when you're in a bright space, sometimes it's hard to see exactly what's going on. So these numbers can be very helpful to you. You can also look at the histogram, obviously. And we can see over here on the histogram, we have this area here is white. You know, we can see here where her skin tone is right around where it should be. That's the hot spot on her nose. And then this is her neutral. And then over here is her dark. So you get used to, depending on different people you work with, where the skin tone should be. But that's about where it should be for cadence. Now, what we didn't do, remember I said before, if you change your lighting, you got to do another color balance. So we'll do that. Cool, cool, cool. I'm going to jump in here, grab my little doobie, click that. Again, it didn't change much. I mean, and hopefully with professional gear, it shouldn't change it much, but it will. Especially if you get old stuff, it'll start to change the color. Or silver will do it sometimes. Good. Yeah, images are coming through. Nice, smooth, crisp, but look at how smooth that skin is. This is the favorite part of the whole thing when the subject, everybody who gets in front of the camera, they cringe at the moment where I zoom in 300% on their face.
I'm always like, oh no, what are we doing?
Yeah, it's always like, oh no, but you knew it was going to happen. All right, so, right, there you go. There is my secret, which is basically the lantern. All right, let's see what we got here. I'm looking at the chat. Got a crop. Yep. Victory, if I can get them to shoot for free with me. Yeah, well, that is a victory. Thanks. Okay, do family. Okay. Huh. All right, talking about megapixels. Well, you know what? That is one thing. I didn't really talk about it too much this time. I'm not really... Which camera is it? This one? Yeah. For most of the work that I do, which is teaching photography and doing headshots and portraits and small magazine stuff, 22 megapixels or whatever this camera is totally fine. If you are doing beauty like for a beauty ad and it's going to be retouched, because it will be retouched, you probably want to invest in or rent a more high megapixel camera. The more megapixels you have, and everybody's probably going, the bigger you can print it. But no, the more megapixels you have, the easier it is to retouch it because you've got that detail to go in there and do it. If you have files that are really small, when you're trying to retouch it, you're kind of smoothing things out and it can look really kind of off. The more megapixels you can get in there and be very gradual. So high megapixel cameras for beauty are probably where you want to be if you can. So if you get an actual beauty client, like a makeup ad or something like that, rent or borrow or steal or buy, don't steal it, a more megapixel camera. But if you're doing it for a portrait of somebody, this is more than enough, especially if you're not going to do a lot of retouching, which we talked about earlier. So cool. So I think in the end, we gave you two different ways to do it, two similar results with slight differences. And the main differences are this. I'm just going to kind of run through it. I'm going to show you this. So this is, we'll call this our final shot here. And then we'll come up and we'll look at the, I'm just going to pick one. That's actually a little bit hot. Let me kind of bring that down a little bit so we're on fair basis here. Right? That's the beauty dish. Yeah. You know that they're close when it's hard to tell the difference. Yeah, that's the beauty dish. All right. So, actually, I'm not sure I'm trying to find a closer comparison. Beauty dish. Because I started messing around with the black flats and stuff. I guess right here would be where I had it, where I wanted it. Yeah, there we go. All right. The beauty dish one's a little bit hotter. I think part of that has to do with, you can't see it, of course, because I'm futzing around over there and you're looking at nothing. Well, you're not looking at nothing, you're looking at cadence. What we've got here on the left is the beauty dish shot. On the right is the lantern. The exposure is apparently slightly different. I mean, you could bring the lantern shot up if you wanted, but the main reason why you see the contrast here, to me, or based on my experience, is because the beauty dish, it has two things going for it. One is that Well, first of all, we have the extra light in the room that's bringing the whole thing brighter, but also the beauty dish is silver and it is not diffused at all, which means that our highlight, which is most of the skin tone, is going to be a little bit punchier. This is diffuse. Diffuse controls your highlights, which means that you're going to have less contrast in the highlights, so the skin tone is going to be more even. So if you are photographing somebody who's got, let's say, oily skin or shiny skin or this kind of thing, without, you know, obviously makeup can help there, but something that's more diffuse will help, like the lantern. If you want something that's more punchy and you want to show off that shine, the beauty dish is going to be more to your advantage. So both tools can work. It really depends on what you're doing. Somebody asked earlier about the pop-up or the fold-out beauty dishes. Personally, I feel like those act way more like softboxes than a true beauty dish, so they're fine. They're not a beauty dish. They're something else. But if you like the results you're getting from it, then it's the perfect tool for you, right? Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I have to make sure I say that. Sometimes I forget. If you haven't already, please do like the video. That way Adorama knows that you like this and they'll keep having me come back. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. So you get more videos like this. More and more they're going live. Seth goes live once or twice a month. Gavin goes live here. I go live twice a month. I'll be back again on the 12th, which is after all the holidays. So I think everyone's over by then.
I think so.
So it's hard to keep trying to keep track of all of them, but I know we're in the middle of Hanukkah right now, so happy Hanukkah, right? We've got the Christmas holiday coming up. We have New Year's, so if you're celebrating any of these holidays, happy holidays. If you're not, well, happy days, right? We might as well all just be happy. I'll see you after the new year. Let me know in the comments below what other videos you'd like to see. Like I say, I'm here twice a month. What kind of stuff would you guys like us to do here on the channel? We can do lots of stuff, not everything. Underwater. That might be tricky in the studio, but you know, you never know. Let us know what you're looking for. They're beeping the horns outside. I always talk about the traffic, but I don't think anybody online can ever hear it. But thanks everybody for supporting the channel, supporting me, supporting Cadence. You can find Cadence at Cadence Frank. I'm Daniel Norton, and we'll see you next year.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
All right, let's see. I'm never ready to switch. Pretend like I am closing this very well. I have to get the thanks for watching thing, switch it to there, and then go like